Hi, YouTube. Let's get our Twitch friends going here and we'll get this baby on the road. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stress Free Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Hope everybody's doing well. This is the first show in almost 9 months, I think. Certainly 8 months, where I haven't had to worry about finishing this Frank Luke script because I finished it. When did I finish it? Was it yesterday morning or the morning before? I think it was yesterday morning. 4 parts, and each one of the 4 parts was 80 pages. Then I looked at the part 4. I knew it was running a little long. I thought it might be 100, 103. It was 158. So 391 pages of script uncut. It's just I'm not proud of that. I'm mortified. I just want to get like a flamethrower and just pot it down. But the main thing is it's out the door and it's delivered, so I can start getting on with all the other things I've been talking about forever. And I'm very, very, very happy to have it done. It's I don't know how to explain this. This fortunately we won't be talking about this every week anymore, but since this is the last one where it was on the radar anyway, it just, the closer I got to the end, the more granular it got. These people just started talking and I couldn't shut them up. I just couldn't. They just kept going. And I'm thinking, I don't have scenes where he's brushing his teeth or anything, but man. So I had this historical dates, and I had all these dates to account for, and I had to do something on the 26th of September of 1918, and I had to do something on the 27th of September, and the granularity just got crazy. I do think I talked. I basically told, I didn't read it to her, but I finished a couple nights before that. I finished Luke's final letter to his fiance, and I basically told Natasha about it. I basically read it, and she started crying, so that made me happy. Not that she's happy when she's crying, but it's good if it's third person thing with the writer who's exhausted, who's doing it from memory, is talking about this final letter and got her weeping. That made me happy. But I don't know, anyway, it's in the door, and it's 5 months later than what I thought it was. But it's actually done. Something bizarre happened. The whole, I'm going to use a French word that I learned in school to show you how educated I am. Now, you must all listen to me and pay attention to me no matter what I say, because I'm very, very smart, you see. The whole denouement, the denouement, the climax of the story is, it's not the height of the story, it's not even the ending of the story, it's just is when he's shot and killed. And everything about a movie screenplay is describing things from the outside. You can't do internal dialogue. You've just got to describe what the camera sees. And then, of course, it's been said, and I think it's true, if you can imagine it, you can film it. And I didn't do this on purpose. I just wrote the scenes leading up to him on this last couple seconds, and then this hidden, kind of a concealed machine gun position, opens fire. He flies right in front of it. There's no way to miss him. These bullets, I described these bullets, the tracers coming out in a flat plane. It's like flying into a circular saw. And then I just switched persons. I just switched tenses in terms of the story, and everything that had been written from the outside, I just don't know why. I can't explain it. I just wrote it from the inside. It's like, why is my arm not moving, and why is my side wet, and where, I hear voices, must be Apaches, and just the whole thing, just the shock of it. That's what I was trying to capture. Was this this whole thing from the outside. Okay, you got a wounded pilot, and he gets up and he staggers to the stream, and he turns and he's barely able to breathe, and he pushes himself out from the mud, and bang, 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 and that's it. That's how it was described. That's how it was described in Steve Skinner's book, and that's how I thought I would describe it in the movie. But the second he got hit, I just started describing it from what he's experiencing. Just the to me, it was the only way to capture just the shock of it. It's like, oh yeah, I get shot through both lungs. Okay. So what do you do with that? I mean, does the actor go, oh. I mean, for me, I just was describing it. Fever Dream, says Copy Shinoda. It's exactly what it was. And it just wrote itself. In fact, I think I'm tempted. I'll just read it to you, honestly. Because you've earned it, number one. But because it was a dissociative experience for me. And Natasha, who knows me better than I do, said, the reason that this thing just had there was just so much stuff. She said, you've just lived there, and you've lived with these people for 8 months, and you have to account for all these days. So I'll just read it to you, because this is a movie screenplay, and it is going to have to be filmed, but I didn't know how I could describe what was going on in his mind from the outside. I figured if I described what was going on from his mind from the inside, that would paint a word picture, and then that could be filmed somehow. So I will, even though it's not technically my property, I will read you what happened here. It was very strange. Okay, give me 1 second here to pull this baby up. Yeah, it was a very strange experience. And then we'll jump into questions and might talk a little bit about some of this. No, I finished it this morning. Did the last conversion to the PDF this morning at 1:14 a.m. So here's what I wrote for the climax of this last 5 months. I had to try to catch what it's like to be mortally wounded while you're flying an airplane. So here it is. Hang on a second. Getting there. My God, I wrote 100. I was writing 30, 40 pages a day the last 4 or 5 days. Keep on going, Bill. Keep on going. Keep on going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I burned out like 17 scroll wheels on mice and so on. All right, here we go. So he had been, in the first series, first episode, he goes as a boy, goes camping out with his friend Bill Elder. They go out into Apache country, and he used to fish the streams out there, and I think that's probably all the backstory you need. Okay, so here we go. He's just burst his last balloon, all the ground fire. He's escaped. He's flown over the town of Mervaux. A major anti-aircraft battery opens up over there. He turns away. He's flying very close to the mountain. He's utterly convinced he's safe. He's got this gigantic mountain between him and danger. He didn't see it when he was coming into the valley. He's reversing, is going out the other way. He's now right up against the side of this ridge, which didn't open fire on him on the way in, wisely, because he was out of range, but they held their fire there. And so now, as he's flying along this ridge, these guys are, 50, 60 yards away as he comes around the corner. So here's what I wrote. And I'll get you to the end of this segment. So here we go. Luke flies alongside the curved crescent ridge, looking down at his map, trying to calculate his route back to Verdun. He does not notice the small scallop clearing on the side of the ridge, like someone had taken an ice cream scoop to the side of the Côte de Saint-Germain. Exterior clearing. Seems almost pathetic. 2 German officers, a gunner, a loader, and a puny-looking single machine gun on what looks to be a flimsy photographer's tripod. Both officers lower their binoculars and look off to their left. They can tell from the sound that the Spad is almost upon them, and then there it is, directly in front of them. Luke's plane is so close that it would be impossible to open fire and not hit it. Tracer rounds spit out at the biplane. Cut to exterior Luke's Spad continuous. Luke looks up just in time to see the bright orange tracers rising out in a flat plane. It's like flying into a circular saw. The rounds stitch through the engine cowling, shatter the machine gun, smash his windscreen, and then thud. All sound is lost in a high-pitched whine. The view ahead instantly goes gray and out of focus. Luke pulls back on the throttle with his left arm, but to his amazement, his arm doesn't move. Falls to his side. He takes his right hand off the stick, cuts the throttle with his right hand, and then tries to fly the airplane again. The ground ahead slopes away to the valley floor off to his left. He circles in that direction, prop idling. He hears a frothy sucking sound. Dark specks stain his goggles. Is it oil from the engine? He wipes it with his fingers. It's red. Must be blood. From where? His mouth feels wet, like he's spitting out water on the sidelines after a big play. He puts his heavy gloves up to his mouth. They come back soaked in blood. He remembers he's in an airplane. He's very low now. He sees a small berm ahead and jerks the stick back. The Spad staggers into the air and then comes down hard on the wheels. The plane seems to be stopping quickly in the muddy grass, but he's more interested in why his left side feels so wet. He opens his flying jacket. The entire left inside lining is a sheet of scarlet. He removes his leather notebook and opens it. Marie's face has got a photograph of Marie in his leather notebook. Marie's face is covered in blood. He very carefully wipes the blood off of her face with his gloved thumb, then closes it again. The plane is stopped. That's good. And the whine slowly fades. He can hear the sound of running water. Reminds him of the San Carlos. Maybe that's where he landed. Perhaps Bill is nearby. Luke. Bill? Bill? He hears voices. It's a foreign language, probably Apaches. He feels for his brand new pistol. It's right where it's supposed to be. That's good. The voices are getting closer. That's not good. Wait. He's in an airplane. Of course he's in an airplane. He's a pilot. He needs to get out of the airplane. This is muscle memory. He's done it 100 times. He moves his left hand to the canopy rail, but his left hand is still hanging by his side. That's odd. He feels around in between his arm and his chest, and his fingers somehow go inside him. That doesn't make any sense. Voices are closer now. Angry voices. Okay, well, he'll go out the other side. Just stand up. Legs are working fine. That's good. Everything's going to be okay. Put your butt on the canopy rail. Good. Can't swing your legs out and hold on at the same time, so no choice but to just fall backward. World goes black from pain, but you can still hear the voices. Germans, that's it. Germans. Gotta move. Gotta move now. Get to your feet, Frank. Stop looking at your boots. Something golden on the ground. You can come back for that later. Get to the water. It's a free ride downstream. Get back behind friendly lines. Just keep moving to the sound of the water. Bushes ahead, small trees, cover. Very good. Something's wrapped around his chest like a big snake or something, squeezing tighter with every breath. He's going to have to shoot it. Getting to the water now in the bushes. He's moving, but he doesn't feel his legs. It's almost like flying. Okay. Just sit here for a minute. Try and catch your breath. They can't see you, the Germans. Time for Mom and Pop's present. His mother and father gave him this pistol. This is not the pistol he's actually got. He's got a rundown service pistol. Time for Mom and Pop's present. He reaches for it, feels its weight. It's a great feeling. Reminds him of home. Why is his face wet and cold? Why can't he see out of his left eye? Why is he lying face down in the mud? It's not bad once you get used to it. Why is he holding his breath like this? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe he'll just rest here a minute, just for a minute. The Germans sound far away now. Everything sounds far away. Good. Oh, look. There's his right hand in the mud. Wait a minute. That's not his pistol. That's a Colt Navy. That's a coward's gun. Okay, he needs to get up. He needs to get up now. Just get to his knees. Good. Starting to get very dark. Where'd all the color go? The red on his gloves looks like black ink. You can worry about that later. Stand up. Stand up, Frank. Be a man. Stand up. Good. You're a good boy, Frank. You've always been a good boy. The Germans are coming, but the stupid Colt Navy... Oh, thank God. Thank you, God. It's not the Colt Navy after all. It's his brand new pistol right out of the basket. Look at how that baby catches the light of the setting sun. Angry men very close now shouting something. Probably want him to give up. Boy, are they in for a surprise. You can't see them, can't see anything, but you can hear them. Boom. Not nearly as loud as he remembers it. It's the right sound, though. It means business. But it's like it's shooting underwater. Boom. Come on. It's louder than that. You know it is. Yeah, I'll be right there, Pop. No, I didn't forget. Where are you, you red and blue bastard? You killed his best friend. He can hear you. You're right about... Boom. Exterior Crete, last light. The German soldiers moved carefully through the bush. None of the shots came close, but you can't be too careful. There's something on the ground ahead. Boots, brown boots, toes up. One of the soldiers pushes aside the undergrowth with the tip of his rifle. A man is lying there, blonde hair, big hole in his left side, blue eyes, staring at the sky as the stars start to come out. Fade to black, sound of crickets running water, fading out, black screen. And that's how Frank Luke dies in the fullback. So when you sit there and read it, this is the question. Eric says, Bart's Treasure says, excellent, glad you wrote it that way. I can picture the film, his inner voice talking to him, makes sense. And somebody said, oh, Eric, it's not exactly screenplay format. It's not. I just went off the rails. It's very vivid and compelling, though. You have to ask, is the audience going to hear his thoughts? No, they're not going to hear any of them. They're going to... This is where the movie making comes in. This is where the movie making comes in. For example, and I'm just spitballing here. He lands, he hears the sound of the water. He's sitting there stunned in his... This is what the audience sees. If I were to write this from the outside, this is how I would cover it. He's sitting there in the cockpit. He hears the sound of running water. There's a little stream in Mervaux. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little brook. And he's sitting there, and he closes his eyes and hears the water. And then you see him and his friend Bill Elders just fishing in the river. They're 16 years old. Just the water sound never changes. The water sound never changes. It's the same sound. He just closes his eyes and then the audience sees them fishing in the sunlight, smiling. Hey, Bill. And you cut back to him in the plane, and he's dying, and it's dark, and practically dark, and he's covered in blood. It's like, Bill, that's how you shoot. That's how you shoot. If you can imagine it, you can shoot it. You can film it. His parents gave him a 40 in the screenplay. Parents gave him a .45 automatic after he won the state championship game. He used to let his father used to let him borrow a Colt Navy pistol that belonged to his father's uncle, but his father's uncle was a coward. And when he gave Frank the new pistol, he told him the story about how his uncle was a coward. Never told him that before. It's enough to make him cry. Those people took those things seriously back then. And so his dad says, "This is a coward's gun, Frank. I let you use it because you were a kid. Now you're old enough to understand. I'm not letting my brave son take a coward's gun, go out camping, after the great, year you've had. So here, mother." And she brings up a picnic basket and opens up, and inside is this brand new 1911 .45A1 given to a kid in 1915. So it's a brand new pistol. So when he's lying in the mud and he sees the he sees the Colt Navy in his hand. From the first episode, we already know that story. That's a coward's gun. His father says so verbatim. He says, it's a coward's gun, Frank. I'm not going to have my brave son going out there with that thing anymore. Here's your new gun. This is mine, yeah, on one condition, Frank. Just promise me you're never going to run away from a fight. I'm not afraid of anything, Dad. I promise. I'll never run away from a fight. So at the end of the movie, at the end of his life, if you do this once or twice with the example I gave of the fishing, you can show him in the cockpit of the plane, or he's already on the ground by this point. You can show him like unsteady on his feet, and he's got this gun in his hand. It's not his actual gun. It's just a service version of the 1911. It's just a worn, shot-out Army-issue gun. But in his hand, it's his brand new shiny pistol. And if you have done the internal vision thing enough, you can have him turn and say, "I'm coming, Pop. I heard you. I didn't forget. You know, I didn't forget. Didn't forget my promise. Didn't forget my promise to never run away from a fight. Get on your feet, Frank. Stand up. Stand up." Steve Skinner's book is called The Stand. That's why Frank Luke is Frank Luke. OpenAI. Yeah, that's. You never know how these things are going to get done. I did have an idea. I will pursue it with my employers, but relatively simply. Now it's just a. First of all, there's a lot that I can cut, but there's something called a table read. Oh, hey Clay, sorry I didn't see you earlier. There's something called a table read, and if I could find, 4 or 5 actors, I could assign each, actors can do 2 or 3 roles. But if you had 4 or 5 main actors for the main roles, well, Phil, I don't have to come visit and shoot your 9/11. I got my own 9/11. Shoot it out of your hand. It's good to see you there, buddy. I need to talk to you, actually. But it would be nice. It would be fun and essentially free, or close enough to free, to do a table read of this whole thing. And it would play like a radio show. And the reason I'm interested in doing this is because, well, the big reason, a little reason. The big reason is any movie you've ever seen, ever, The Matrix, let's say, or Star Wars, or anything, any movie ever, Citizen Kane, Aliens. If you can have 5 actors sitting around a table reading it, and you don't lose interest in the story. In other words, if the story is not so dependent on your special effects and your visual effects, then you've got an actual real story there. And if you've got the story, then anything you add helps it. And I might as well do this. I'll read you what I read to Natasha. So I got to get this out of my system. I've been working on this for 8 months, and to be honest with you, perfectly honest with you, it's a bad day today. Mostly because after I saw just the sheer magnitude of ink that I dumped, I just thought, man, I don't even know if this is any good. I really don't. I just, losing a little faith in it because I've been living with it for so long, and now it's finally out the door. So that wouldn't be the final destination of it. It wouldn't be like a table read or a radio show just instead of the movie, in place of the movie. It'd just be something. I said there were 2 reasons. One of them is to see if it holds people's interest, and secondly, if you do it as a table read, you can definitely feel where it's slowing down, and that's a good way to determine the cuts. Yeah, I don't think I'll read the other one. So, anyway, it was by far the strangest experience I've ever had writing, and also um, uh, the most work I've ever done writing. Longest I've worked on something, the most work, the most research, and it was it, today. Just it hasn't dawned on me yet, and it won't dawn on me for a while until it's like. But for the last, I mean, I'm working on this thing for 8 months. So for the last 4 months, there hasn't been a minute, there hasn't been a day of my life in the last 4 months where I haven't felt like, well, you can't go out and do anything fun because you've got to get this bloody script out the door. So anyway, here's a little coincidence. Although these two Venn diagrams, which the vice president likes very much, don't overlap. My friend Phil Trick is here from the Miami Planetarium days, and then I look over here in the YouTube stream, and I see from Chris Elisar, hey Bill, remember the wacky Arthur Barton from the Museum of Science? I do remember Arthur Barton from the Museum of Science, Chris. How do you remember how do you know Arthur Barton from the Museum of Science? I want to make sure he's not his son or relative or something, because Arthur Barton was a bit of a character, actually. I'm very curious to know. That's the first time I've heard that name mentioned in a long time. So Art Barton was hired after Phil left and was brought in as a kind of a production coordinator. And he and I did we went back and forth on a couple issues. I was probably 15, 16 when he got there. Any chance of throwing together a Jack Horkheimer tribute doc? Yes, I was very pleased with the amateur audio work I did on getting Long Journey of a Young God to be audible. I'll put that up. There's so many things that I've been saying I'm going to do, and I haven't been able to do any of them because this thing had to be delivered. And anytime I'd start anything serious, like the website, for example, that happened in the middle of this script, and I got it 80% of the way, 85% of the way, and then I just had to drop it because this thing had to get done. But I'm actually curious, Chris, to know how you know Arthur Barton. Anyway, so Arthur Barton was brought in as a production coordinator, and there are times when we got along and other times when we didn't get along. And Art was a bit like the guy who's the antagonist in this story. Really, he's a real disciplinarian type of guy. He coached me on Child of the Universe at the console. My God, man. There's 3 people who really get this now. Phil Trick gets it, I get it, and Chris Elisar gets it, and maybe some others. What was that at the Miami Planetarium? So Art Barton was probably about 5'4" high and about 5'6" wide. He was a strange dude. And he was constantly talking about how he was going to lose all this weight and how he's going to have all this surgery and all this exercise and all this other stuff. Phil says Santa Fe College near Gainesville has a copy of Child of the Universe. We should get it because he deserves some recognition. You know who I could get to promote a Jack Horkheimer? And not only promote, I guarantee you I could get this. Of all the people in the world, the one person I guarantee you I think could get this a little bit of exposure is Mike Rowe. I did 4 Mike Rowe podcasts. I think it was the second or third one. And he was saying, hey, before we get started, I'm looking at your resume here. You worked at the Miami Planetarium with Jack Horkheimer. I said, yeah. He said, I watched Star Hustler every night. I loved it. I saw every single one of them. He just couldn't get over that I'd worked with him. But the thing about Art that was just so tragic was you could tell he was serious about all these things that he was going to do about his weight, but he never did any of them. And he was one of those people who said it was a it was a medical condition. And I thought, well, poor guy with a medical condition. And then after a couple of days of working with him, he would go to the snack bar. I've never seen anybody do this before. We had a little snack bar at the Museum of Science, where nothing but the finest was served. And I saw Art Barton come back. We used to hang out in the box office with my friend Vosko, the Bulgarian poet. And I saw Art Barton take a decent-sized hot dog, like that. And most people eat a hot dog longitudinally. Art Barton bit the middle out of the hot dog. That was one bite. One of the remaining thirds was a second bite, and the other remaining third was a third bite. 3 bites gone. And he did that with 2 or 3 of them. And I thought, it might not have to do so much with the genetic stuff as it was with the hot dogs, I'm thinking. He was a strange guy. I don't want to speak ill of him, because I certainly didn't hate him. We had a lot of laughs sometimes, but he was big on authority, and he was the guy who, when I went to Jack Horkheimer when I was, I think, 15, about writing the summer show. There was a summer show that ran during school break, so we had a special morning show for kids during the school year, but we had a summer show where it was, so basically it's, do you want to do the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. radio show? I said sure. So he gave me a chance to write a planetarium show. It was the first thing I ever got paid to write. And since Arthur Barton was my immediate superior's production coordinator, he wanted me to give him the script, so I did. And Art Barton gave me the script back, and he had made notes in red on virtually every single line I wrote. Things like I would write, "This is the most beautiful constellation in the sky," and he would write, "A more beautiful constellation is hard to find." That kind of thing, right? Not real notes, just what he would have written. And it really made me angry. So I went into Jack Horkheimer's office with the script all marked up, and I put it down. I've told this story before. It was one of my favorite moments. Put it down on his desk, Jack's desk, and I said, "Well, I don't know what to do about this," because Art was with me. It's not like I went behind his back. And he turned to Art Barton. He said, "Don't you ever mark another word of this. This kid's a writer. This boy's a writer. He knows what he's doing. Don't you ever touch his stuff again." And that was a big moment for me. Not a big moment for me. That was the thing about Horkheimer. He was absolutely barking mad. He was the most difficult guy to work with. He made everybody around him just sent him to the hospital with a heart attack. He was just unbearable. And at the same time, he had this tremendous kind of generosity, and you couldn't take away no matter how annoying he got. Annoying is an understatement. No matter how abusive he got, you never could forget the fact that he was an absolute genius, and what he was doing, was something no one's ever done before. He gave me the world. I'm listening to Lotte Lenya and Kurt Weill in the opening of Child of the Universe. I'm 15, 14 years old. I'm listening to Lotte Lenya and Kurt Weill and talking about the between the war period in Germany and how cynical everything was. I would have been out in the car listening to Fox on the Run or something like that otherwise. So anyway, Art Barton had a I don't know if you want to call this a death wish or not. I don't know what else to call it, frankly. But Art kept talking about how he's going to get himself in shape, and he kept saying how every male in his family, his father and his brothers and all the rest of it, and his father's brothers, well, we got to get this Chris Olsar into this thing, Phil. Hang on. So Art was talking about how they all died before they were 60, like every one of them. And so Art eventually left the Miami Planetarium, went off on his own, and then a couple years later we heard he was walking from his house to the planetarium and he just went down on his face, and that was the end of that. Uh, and he was, I want to say he was 52. How does Neil deGrasse Tyson measure up to Jack? You shouldn't even use those. I didn't mention his last name in the same sentence, and I won't now so that I don't have to. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a copycat and a hack. Jack Horkheimer was a lunatic and a genius, and one of the most original poetic thinkers I've ever seen. This is why, for those of you who only knew him through all of you who only knew him through Star Hustler, anybody who really knew Jack Horkheimer well, and there weren't many of us, but I was one of them, Phil was one of them, and we can mention another couple names too. But for me, and I'm pretty sure it's true for Phil as well, and I know for a bunch of other people, anybody who ever really knew Horkheimer well was embarrassed by Star Hustler. I couldn't watch it. I was just embarrassed by what he was doing there. This character he was playing, this kind of greetings. It was a cartoon to me. He was so much deeper than that. He was so much more creative and original, but he just went for the camp. He just loved camp, as a style. He just loved it. And I don't know if maybe he just didn't have the confidence to be himself on camera. Because what Star Hustler was, or Stargazer as it got to be, once the internet came along and people started searching for Hustler, they got some interesting replies. Lapko says Jack didn't even have an astronomy background, did he? No, he did not. He was a jazz pianist. He was a good jazz pianist. His name Jack Foley. And yeah, Buck Rogers, exactly. That was one of my favorite shows. And that was the show that was playing when I really got to meet Phil, and the rest of the gang was Buck Rogers right on. But he could write in all of these different styles. He had this incredibly eclectic knowledge. He could tie things together that just, well, this is how I learned to do what I do. He just could find a way to tell Horky's Hammond harmonies. Yeah, he was a great musician and a well-educated man, and he had a poetic view of things. He was just. Well, I almost said he was off his meds. I don't think he was ever on meds. If he was on meds, maybe he wouldn't have created these things. Anyway, Child of the Universe is a work of art. Everybody says it's his masterpiece. I personally disagree. I think Long Journey of a Young God was his masterpiece. I have the audio of that. And I will, that's an easy thing for me to post. I'll post it in Ephemera and I'll do a special on it. But it'd be nice to talk to him. I'll send it to Mike Rowe. I meant to. Because Long Journey of a Young God is, it's astonishing. It's astonishing. He wanted to do a little retrospective of what was going on before Apollo, and the next thing you know, he's playing Crocodile Rock in there, and he's got like Life magazine covers and the planetarium spinning around like a record player, the whole room spinning like a record disc, and then he goes from that into like the Swan of Tuonela, and then he goes into the Apollo sequence, which Phil did such an incredible job of mastering. Next thing you know, you've got you got Aaron Copland, and you come out of Aaron Copland, and you've got Bach, and it's just amazing, just little chapters, and I don't know. Needless to say, I wouldn't be here without him. But no, he didn't have an astronomy background. He just loved astronomy, which is the difference between him and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because I think Neil deGrasse Tyson does have an astronomy background, or a degree or something. But I've never heard anything original come from Neil deGrasse Tyson's mouth, and I think that's the thing that bothers me about Neil deGrasse Tyson, is I've never heard him say anything original or interesting. All I've heard him say is stuff that Carl Sagan said in a more pompous kind of way, like he's the go-to science guy. Anyway, so Chris, was that your real name? Because Phil, he was like, I'm sorry for this being such inside baseball, folks, but Chris Elisar says he learned he interned at WKAT under the tutelage of Art Smith. So good Lord, man, I mean, Art Smith. Vasco used to call him Indiana Jones. He was building radio stations out in the jungle and stuff. WKAT in Miami was like one of the original talk show. I mean, Larry King started there. Sally Jesse started there, I think. WKAT in Miami. Anyway, this is interesting for me and for two or three other people. I don't guess it's much interesting for anybody else, but let's do some questions, why don't we? Tasha always tells me when I'm feeling low, it's like, just go do the stress for lounge, always cheer up, and I always do. Because it's been a strange day. I am very much looking forward to getting on with story mechanics and getting back to Major Mace Mattingly and start putting down some serious stuff with things to come, and get the website to, instead of from 85%, get it up to 98% or something like that. But he was a great man. And he deserved I think he deserved better than what he got, because his last years were, I think, I wasn't there for them, but I've heard they were relatively horrific. Well, on the other hand, I guess you reap what you sow, right? When you terrorize your staff and you're so emotionally volatile that you can't help but smash the feelings of everybody around you, you're going to end up surrounded by people with thick skin, I reckon. Thank you, Eric, for putting this together so quickly. I've got thoughts on the Baltimore Bridge collapse, yeah, and some on the whole Candace thing. Let's see what we get. As we only got, okay, so we got 3. So because I said I'd be here so late. So we'll do some questions from the stream as well. But see what we got. Okay, Steve Young. Here the Navy has to close down its bulk fuel storage facility at Pearl Harbor due to its leaking into the aquifer it's built on top of. That's just great news considering our Navy may need to face off against the Chinese Army Navy over Taiwan. Well, first of all, that is bad news. Secondly, if they told me that they had to shut down the bulk fuel facility because of some idiotic green thing, like it was emitting too much carbon dioxide or something, I'd just say, well, this is just slow motion sabotage. You might as well blow the ships up and just slow motion sabotage. Leaking fuels and things like that into the aquifer, especially on an island, that is a real problem. But I have to tell you, it doesn't sound to me like an overwhelming engineering problem. It's not like building a Mach 10, aircraft with a man on it. I mean, building a tank that doesn't leak into the aquifer doesn't strike me as either a tremendously difficult nor a tremendously expensive, in the scheme of things, although I'm sure it'll cost billions of dollars, thing to fix. So if it's been leaking into the aquifer, there are still Hawaiians there. So I say, okay, if we've discovered this is the case, then let it keep leaking, and tomorrow morning start building some freaking castles that don't fall over into the swamp. I mean, just how hard can it be? Get out there and build some 21st century containers, and while you're at it, you may want to harden them both against air attack and against EMP attack and all the rest of that stuff, against sabotage. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. It would be if I was Defense Secretary. It's like, yeah, we got to spend money on this. Okay, well, we got bigger fish to fry than immediately going around and improving the quality of our storage tanks. But if it turns out we have to do that, then there we go. So is letting Maui burn because the first responders were mincing about discussing water shores. Yeah, the whole Maui thing was... When people get... The truth about what actually happened at Maui will eventually get out. It'll be part of history eventually. All this stuff will... People will look back at this time when people went insane together, like, before Halley's Comet. Thank you, Jack. or Phil, or both of you. When Halley's Comet came in, was it 1912, I guess? People were told that the Earth's going to pass through the tail of the comet, which apparently it did, and that all of these poisonous gas in the comet are going to filter down through the Earth's atmosphere, and everybody's going to be gassed to death. And so there was a big rush on gas masks and hysteria and all the rest of this mass hysteria that happens with, Halley's Comet or Skylab being deorbited, and Comet Kohoutek from right around that time, around 74, 75, which was going to be the killer comet. It's just this huge, enormous, going to be the most brilliant comet in the history of the world. It was the worst comet ever, the biggest disappointment in the history of astronomy, Comet Kohoutek. But anyway, I did not know that, but I would say let's get that fixed. And let's do it now. Eric Blake, the man with the hats in the office tonight, come on in and clear up a mystery. Okay, here we go. So House Speaker Mike Johnson, a.k.a. Atticus Finch, Esquire. I haven't seen much of Mike Johnson, but what I've seen I actually kind of like, actually. I know he said some stuff's a little weird, but on general, just as a vibe, I like his vibe. Has apparently dropped the ball by sanctioning a continuing resolution, much to the chagrin of MTG. Okay. Money isn't money anymore. I no longer get torqued about federal spending. When somebody says this is going to cost another $3 billion, I look at what $34 trillion is, and I just realize, okay, why not? Why not? There's nothing. I gave up on thinking about the federal budget and federal spending as anything approximating an economy, anything approximating a balance sheet. It's not. It hasn't collapsed yet. It may collapse tomorrow, maybe in the process of collapsing right now. But in any event, this business about trying to hold Congress to spending limits with $34,000 billion in debt, no, it's never going to get repaid. These books that we're keeping are, I don't know what the solution is, but look, I'm not saying I want to turn up the spending. I'm just saying it's not a real world problem in the way that we understand it anymore. It's not a balance sheet problem in the way we understand it anymore. So even leaving aside the fact that Johnson specifically said no more continuing resolutions, why do Republicans keep caving in on this issue in particular? Simply out of fear of being blamed for a showdown? If so, how exactly can we fight this fear? Yes, we got blamed for the government shutdowns, and since the Democrats own the news media, it's not a question of like, hey, we're going to cut spending because of these outrageous overages or things from personal retirement funds and all the rest of that stuff. No, if the government shuts down because of the Republicans, the first thing they do is they cut the forest rangers, right? So you can't go to Yosemite, or you can't go to Yellowstone, or can't go to any of these places. And when you're turned away at the gate, they say, it's not our fault, it's the Republicans shut down the government. So, because the Forest Service and the national parks take up such a huge amount of our federal spending, that's certainly the people that get affected the first. So, and it's not just the dollar. T. Smith says realization of the worthlessness of the dollar is going to hurt. The dollar is worthless, but it's not worthless compared to anything else. The yuan is worthless, and the euro is worthless. It's all built on these. It's not like the euro is a bank that's got gold in it, and it's independent of the dollar, which is independent of the yen or the yuan or whatever. It's just a web of fraud. It may not even be fraud. Well, it is fraud, but it may not even be fraud because whatever's happening, I understand enough to know that whatever's happening is not economics in terms of the kind of economics that everybody else thinks we're still doing. Balance sheet economics. This comes in, this goes out. It hasn't been that for certainly since Obama, and it was heading in that direction before then. So as far as I say, hey, my personal take on this is, what are we talking about? Is it $30 billion? You're going to add $30 billion. Let's say it's $10 billion. We're going to add $10 billion or $20 billion or $50 billion to $34,000 billion, and we're going to risk the blowback in front of an election year to stand on what principle? the time to stand on that principle was in the 1980s, and we didn't. Uh, and and we all know what's going on. Robert Rivera says the answer will be digital currency. That's what they want. It's all. It's not even money anymore. I mean, when you talk about, back when it was, just a few years ago when it was happened, this was $20 trillion. Somebody visualized what $20 trillion is in $100 bills. It's something like 40 World Trade Centers made out of $100 bills. And even then, it's not like there's $34 trillion worth of $100 bills sitting in a giant vault someplace. Because first of all, somebody would be able to do this calculation rather quickly. I know, because I know my audience. But $34 trillion. I don't know what the volume of that is, but it's a big volume. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I just want to win this election. And I almost said we have to win this election, but I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference. It's the path to a soft landing, and but these guys are going down either way. Nobody wants this stuff, and nobody wants this stuff that they're selling. Saw a thing on YouTube today about all these women who are just getting punched in the face in New York City. They're just walking along, just getting punched in the face. Somebody walks up to them and punches them in the face. Okay, well, did it hurt enough to change the way you vote? I bet it didn't. Dan Sterling says I should check out what New Hampshire's doing with goldbacks. See, I'm in favor of the states being able to go back to their own currency, because there are states that have balanced budgets that are not in anything like the financial mess that the federal government is in. And I think we talked about this maybe on the last show. Given computers and stuff, it would have been pretty tough back in the day. But if you took Texas dollars and bought something in California, they'd sell it to you for 40 Texas dollars or 600 California dollars. The thing is too big. It's just too big. It's been too big for a century, well, half a century, certainly since the end of World War II. It's just too big. And it's completely lost all accountability, and the scale is monstrous. And so, yeah, break it up. I'd say let every state have its own currency. And if you want to use federal dollars, we can convert that into Texas dollars, or we can convert that into California dollars. Which way do you want to go? That's what I think is the least destructive solution. But like everything else, we're going to we're already going through a period where what this country looks like on the other side is not look like what it is now. It's going to look better than what it does now, but it's going to look different too. So we'll see. Janie Waterin, howdy and good evening. Howdy and good evening back. Congrats on finishing, Frank Luke. Welcome back to your show. Thank you. That's kind of you. So the president of Mexico blew my mind this week. He said Mexico's tight-knit family values are what saved it from a wave of fentanyl overdoses. Really? That Americans die, paraphrasing now, because we don't let our kids live at home long enough and don't hug them. I buy that argument coming from another source. Is this the same crap that Putin has tried to pull on us when he talked to Tucker about how bad Nazis are? By that I mean that both leaders seem to have chosen an American value to claim as their own value when doing an interview to an American audience in order to bring individual Americans listening, and thusly maybe slowly eventually make us believe that they're just the same as we are. Perfectly said. Absolutely right. Yes, perfectly said. Putin will talk to Tucker Carlson about how he's fighting Nazis, and the fact that Tucker Carlson doesn't just immediately stand up and just say, that's an absurd assertion, and I can't believe you're playing a card like that. It's kind of insulting to me that you would even play that card with me, Mr. President. You want to explain to me how your invasion of Ukraine is the same as the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union? I'm certainly willing to listen to the excuse, although we both know that that's not true. To just go along with that. So yeah, so if the president of Mexico says that Mexican kids aren't dying of fentanyl because they've got better family values. Part of that is probably true. But I also noticed that the Mexican kids aren't dying of fentanyl because the fentanyl is moving through Mexico and being sold in America. If we were to be manufacturing fentanyl in Canada, let's say, transporting it through America and then using American smugglers to bring fentanyl to the streets of Guadalajara and Tijuana and Ciudad Juarez and all the rest of those places, then then we could test the theory. I do think that as a general rule, Mexicans probably have a less toxic. Well, I know they have a less toxic environment than we do. They're not as liberal as we are. That's why I don't have any problem with legal Mexican immigration. I find them to be terrific people, generally speaking, and at least the legal people I meet here just couldn't be nicer. They're family people, and they hold their kids accountable. Not a big fan of the gangs, but or the whole La Raza angle, but nevertheless, not a big fan of the mafia either. So it does have a kind of a fishy smell coming from the president of Mexico, where all the fentanyl comes through to say, "Oh, look at you! You guys all dying of fentanyl up there. What's the matter with you?" Well, he's got a point. There's definitely something wrong. The kids are not all right, but at the same time, we probably wouldn't have so many fentanyl deaths if you were not actively contributing to the cause. Because bottom line is, it's I don't believe it's largely manufactured in Mexico. I think it's coming through Mexico. So there we go. I think that'll seems to be about it for that one. I want to talk about two other things here. I want to talk about the bridge collapse, then I want to talk about the whole Candace Owens thing. I heard I usually listen to things on the way in and out of the studio. When I was coming in here, I heard that there's already a number of conspiracy theories about the ship, how its power went on and off, and that it was a remote control terror device, and that the system was hacked, and that it did this big turn when they said it was out of power, and there's no way to explain it. It was intentionally ramming the... I don't believe any of that. I think this can be much easier explained by just sheer incompetence and poor maintenance. This particular vessel struck a pier, which is not something that most container ships do. Struck a pier real hard just a couple years ago. The crew doesn't seem to be particularly well trained. The company is known to be not exactly paragon of maintenance and safety standards and all the rest of it. So for me, you don't need you only need a conspiracy when you've got a real blocker. When the so-called real story, the official story, when there is no other explanation, when you've got a real blocker there, that's when I'll start listening to conspiracy theories. There were a lot of things about the election in 2020 that were on their face provably alarming. So that's when I'll start listening to other explanations other than, well, just Trump lost because he was so unpopular. And so, all of this stuff about, first of all, it was a terror attack. It wasn't very terrorizing. I mean, I felt sorry for the people, needless to say. I feel sorry about anybody who gets hurt or killed. And, but I didn't lose any sleep after I saw the footage, Accidents happen. I mean, in the rest of the world, these kind of things happen all the time. And in fact, in China, they happen all the time. The number of human souls that are harvested by industrial accidents in China would easily populate a decent-sized state, every year. So it just sounds like it was a badly maintained ship. My understanding is that they had a lot of refrigerated cargo containers on board. Those required more power than the ship was able to generate. The ship kept trying to generate power. The circuit breakers kept breaking. Engineers kept trying to flip the circuit breakers back on and keep the thing going. I suspect that, like everything else, the thinking at the time was, okay, well, if we, you know, we'll find a way to avoid the pillar. Let's not lose all the money we have in our refrigerated cargo, because if we turn off the refrigeration on this container ship full of deviled eggs or whatever the hell they're carrying from one place to another, then let's just see if we get lucky. That's how human beings work. That's not unique to foreign-owned container ships. That's how we lost Columbia. That's how we lost Challengers. We got lucky before. We'll probably get lucky again. Robert Rivera says they're required to have backup electrical systems. There's a lot of things that are required, but that doesn't make it so. I mean, regulations and inspections and safety devices are only as good as the desire to implement them. The number of times where you would see buildings that burned to the ground and killed 200 people, you find out that all of the emergency doors were locked to prevent people, chained locked to prevent people from sneaking into movie theaters or storing stuff in front of an emergency exit or all this flammable material. All of it. People know what the rules are, and virtually everybody follows the rules. It's important to keep in mind, that given the complexity of the society, we don't have ships running into bridges every day. And for the vast, how many transit events are there in the course of a day in America in terms of shipping vessels? How many shipping vessels come in and out of a port in the United States every day? I don't know the number. I'm going to guess it's going to certainly tens of them and probably hundreds of them, I would say, a day. And every day and night, forever, without bumping into bridges and knocking them down. So to me, this is just no mystery here, and you don't need any covert explanation for it. It's just plain incompetence and disregard for the entire idea. That's how the world works. Unlimited Hornet Work says, I think the real question now is, what do we name the replacement bridge? I'm thinking the Lizzo Bridge to reflect modern values. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I did do all the answer. I did all the forum questions earlier. I'll refresh the page. It wasn't a particularly beautiful bridge, and I don't think anybody's really claimed credit for the bridge. So I just think it was I think it was what it was. It was an accident caused by incompetence and institutionalized disregard of safety and training. And thank you for that last line, Janie. It's very nice of you. Here's Road Rider. Did I miss anything? Nope, that's it. Road Rider gets in underneath the grandfather clause about refreshing the page clause. If you have a TSL today, Thursday the 28th at 7:30, there's a SpaceX launch plan for Vandenberg Air Force Base, pouring rain in Central California, so maybe they'll scrub. Natasha and I went to a launch a couple weeks ago. Really underwhelming. And on that particular launch, by the way, that was a pretty decent, because of the lighting conditions, I thought we'd see it really well from the pad, but it turns out that we drove to the one place where you could see the gas expansion the worst. I am proud to say, and I think this is a real compliment for SpaceX. In fact, it's probably the ultimate compliment. The Falcon 9 launch was really pretty boring. Certainly wasn't worth the 2-hour drive. And it's fun to step out and watch them, but even that's kind of like, okay, all right. I did notice that, though. I did see Vandenberg launch tonight, I think between 8:30 and 11 Pacific, something like that. So if I happen to be, if it's convenient for me to step outside, I'll go watch the little Roman candle go up. But other than that, it's starting to get to be like, oh, look, there's a jet airliner in the sky. That's a win. That's actually the ultimate win. Is, oh, yeah, want to see the SpaceX launch? Nah, kind of into this show. So we'll see. In Carmel, California, a few years ago, you were pretty hot on gamers and using video tools to harness their attention since the audience was so huge. Question now that a few years have blown by and more than a few ideas, Does Mason Crew, Frank Luke, what things to come, what we saw, story mechanics, backstage, and right angle, do any of these fit in the vision you had in 2020 of engaging young gamers, or has the Bill vision morphed into something else? Yes, they do. Let's break them down. So Mace Mattingly is a video game character. He's rendered in Unreal Engine, and he's supposed to be a somewhat lighthearted version of Master Chief in terms of being a guy who gives advice and makes commentary. It's designed to get around the YouTube algorithm, and it's also designed to appeal to younger people, visually appeal to them, because I just think he looks cool, and we have just barely begun to crack that egg. So I think it's a way to reach people that don't necessarily go for the guy in the suit standing in front of the burning lake of fire. And I could use something new. And I am, of all the things that I'm happy about being done with the Frank Luke thing, it's mostly being able to get back to Mace Mattingly and to story mechanics. So story mechanics is a complete validation of what I was talking about. It doesn't have anything to do with video games. Well, it'll have some things to mention in video games, but basically, what I'm doing with story mechanics, the premise is that if you keep it politically neutral, in fact, if you don't bring politics into it at all, people will be interested in telling stories, and there's some star appeal there. And the political payoff is that all of these stories are basically morality plays, and we don't have a political problem, we don't have a financial problem, we don't have a crime problem, we have a virtue problem. And we need some examples of right and wrong. So no, the vision hasn't morphed. I was never going to do a video game. That was never part of the plan. But the argument was that look at the people who look at video game channels compared to who look at political commentary channels, and the political commentary channels are, what number, I forget the percentage was, 9% maybe, and all of our efforts and all the people we know and Daily Wire and everything's all going for that 9% sliver when 91% of the field is open. So I'm very much looking forward to getting some Mace Mattingly out there and quickly. I believe the first thing I'll work on is the trailer where they're sitting on the moon watching TV, and it's been so long that Dylan Mulvaney is not really even relevant so much anymore. But we'll find some things for them to comment on. Just a little trailer pitch for what they are. The interview that I did, I'll eventually relight that and put these guys in a better thing. I like the interview, but the interview was a test of practicality, and I was real happy with what came out of that interview. It was certainly better than what I expected, and I would hand the different roles off to different actors, but the problem is that because my mannerisms do come through, but you got to be able to, it's not just that you have to capture their read, you have to capture their facial expressions in 3D at the same time. So I suppose if somebody's got an iPhone 10 or 11, I could set them up so that they could read lines in and we could do it that way. That'd be fine. But generally speaking, I just love them. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm very much looking for, I've got so much gear over here that I bought 3 months ago now. I was just about to set it up. I thought great, I'm almost, I'm 3/4 of the way through this Frank Luke thing. I probably need another 2 weeks for it. I needed another 4 months. It was like I bought a kit plane, and and I'm not a builder, but it's like I sat there and said, all right, what's easy? What can I build? I'll get the plans for an RV or something, and I'll build the thing out of wood or whatever, and I'll build it in my garage, and it'll take me a year. And the next thing you know, I realized I've built the frickin' spruce goose, and and it's like, now what? But I'm very, very, very happy to have that behind me. So that's very good news. So we'll see. Kobo Bunny says, "Are you ready for the eclipse? If you've never seen one, you need to go." I saw the one in 2000 and was it 16? And once I saw that, I said I've got to go to all of them. So as far as the eclipse story goes, this is one of the things that's still up in the air. The short form is Natasha doesn't really want to drive, and I do not want to fly. So I've got a couple of options here, and I don't know. I do not have the plans finalized. And yes, I understand we're talking about what 20 days from now. No. Who am I kidding? I meant to say 10 days from now. What do we got? We are less than 2 weeks out. So 10 days, something like that. We'll talk about it some more on the Stratosphere Lounge, and the Facebook page will be Stratoclips Central. That's where we'll be putting up all the notices, the real-time notices on the Facebook page. But we will meet. I will be there one way or another. Having the eclipse thing unresolved in my head has added a great deal of stress too. But as this thing got so asymptotic, this Frank Luke thing, it's like the more I write, the further away I get. It's like halfway to the goal line. Every single time I would come in and write for 8 hours or 10 hours, I'd move the ball halfway to the goal line, and then I'd say, okay, great, tomorrow I'll finish it. It's like, no, tomorrow you'll move it another halfway to the goal line. It was just practically psychotic. It was really just nuts. But I couldn't chop off limbs until I had the whole thing finished. Now I can. Have a super chat here from our friend Lapco92. If you get a chance on your eclipse trip, swing by OKC and check out the 45th Infantry Division Museum. It has a crap ton of firearms and artifacts from Hitler's Bavarian apartment. Yeah. The Berchtesgaden and the Eagles, not the Eagle's Nest, was it the Eagle's Nest? It's still there. It's a restaurant now or something. We stole his tea set, his linens, and his napkins. I'm glad we did, but I don't think that was adequate compensation for what he stole from us. But we will be doing the eclipse thing, and as I've said many times, it will be in the general vicinity of Fort Worth. And when I say general vicinity, within 20 miles of there, or somewhere, something like that. Let's see. Oh, Mobile Moto says December 4th, 2023, Vans Aircraft filed for protection under Chapter 11 of the Federal Bankruptcy Code, key step in reorganization. Well, I'm sure they'll reorganize it, but I've never seen anything get reorganized and come back stronger than it was before, like rotorway helicopters, for example, and all the rest of it. All these, I'm very concerned about the number of people who are not flying airplanes for real, and it turns out I'm one of them now. So let me just say a few words about this whole Daily Wire thing, and then I think I'll call it a night, because I've been telling you guys I got to do a short show or cut it short because I've still got another 2-3 hours to work here. Well, that was true every single time for months and months and months, but this time, no. This time I don't have anything to do. I can just finish and go home. Thank you for the super chat, though. My take on this is I am such a strong believer in Reagan's 11th commandment, and I don't want to speak ill of anybody, but I have looked at I've watched a number of other videos, and I've looked at the comment section in a number of videos, and it looks like Daily Wire has taken a very big hit, credibility hit, and I'm sorry to see that, because I have a lot of friends over there, and so I mean, here's just, the thing about this show is it's always been predicated on me just being honest about things. I don't know if he's watching it, and if he is, then I hope he certainly takes this as the compliment it's intended to be, because he certainly went through an awful lot of tough time with this. Starting in 2016, it was clear that that Scott wasn't really completely on board with the Trump thing as much as Steve and I was. and emotions were so high at the time, the stakes were so high that Scott's lack of enthusiasm for the Trump train in 2016 cost us a lot of members, a lot. And needless to say, there was the option to eliminate that bleeding, and all I would have had to do would have been to ask my friend and colleague of 15 years to stop saying bad things about Trump. But I never asked him to do that. I really realized. I thought, well, if the thing goes out of business, then it goes out of business. But I'm not doing that. I disagreed with him on some things. I disagreed with him on many things. But the thing about Scott Ott, I know to be a certain fact, is he is a moral character. His perception of things and I differ on a lot of things, but I never once had the slightest suspicion that he was not being 100% honest. And the fact of the matter is, when I would disagree with Scott about things, I would listen, because I figured if Scott disagrees with me, then there's a fair chance I'm wrong about something. So I would at least listen. I want to get to that in a minute. There, Selena Girl says I was mentioned in a Daily Wire drama video. I'm curious to know about that. So we took a big hit on that, and I didn't think it was fair to him then. I don't think it was fair to him now. But when we were getting cancellation notices in, we had a kind of standard reply, which is, we're very grateful for your support, and we're very grateful for your support up until this time, and we certainly understand you not wanting to pay for things that make you angry. And here is the cancellation notice, and that's that. I can't change this. I can't because I don't want to, and I can't because it's a violation of my fundamental principles. Not only is it a question of free speech issue, it's also a question of the deeper issue. Really, it goes to why free speech is important. Everybody talks about free speech. We have to have free speech. I'm a strong, needless to say, strong believer in free speech. But why? Why do we need free speech? Well, because we need to be able to hear people who disagree with us. Because if we don't, we fall into error. If there's two people who have a completely different opinion about something, if it turns out that there is a truth, then the way you get to the truth is to have an argument or discussion, so you put the best facts on the table. Most of the time, the truth is somewhere between those two positions. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes one person's absolutely right and the other's absolutely wrong. But it's the process that counts. And the only thing that would have changed my mind about that would have been if I thought that he was either grandstanding or showboating or being not dishonest but unhonest. That it was like he had an axe to grind or something. I never felt that. So we just took our licks and we kept on going. But it wasn't like a little thing. It was a major hit, and that was the right thing to do, and I'm glad I did the right thing, and I determined at the time, when it became time to make the decision, when it was clear that this was really starting to be an issue, I just remember thinking, first of all, I think Scott's right about many things. Secondly, I believe in free speech. Third, he's a friend. And fourth, I'm not gonna let this thing be run by public opinion. The whole idea of the whole beauty of the membership is that I don't have to be beholden to anybody. I don't have a boss that can fire me. I got 3,000 bosses, and they all have to get together to fire me. So for me, and Scott suffered much worse than he deserved just for having a different opinion. I mean, when we did the Bill Whittle Now thing, I specifically put him in a position of being playing the role of the liberal, so that I could make the argument. I thought it was important to be able to respond to arguments as well as make them. And no matter how many times we said it, he just constantly kept getting people just irate at him. But how can you possibly believe this? He didn't believe it. it was traumatic for him. It was just not fair, not fair. If I should have had a talking dog, what I should have a talking dog, and in fact, that's a rather good idea. But it wasn't a talking dog; it was a real person. So, look, the three trifecta guys are now the three right angle guys, and we have been forever, and we're not going anywhere. So, I've never ever told anybody or asked anybody to say or not say anything about anything, and Donald Trump has done many things that are worthy of criticism, and he needs to be criticized for them, because otherwise we become emotionally reflexive. That's what I don't want to be. I don't want to be knee-jerk reflexive about political issues. If you can't discuss them and look at the other side, then you're just a creature of emotion. You're just that's the essence of reason. Is people? It's the whole idea of what reason is. Reason is the ability to have two people with differing opinions recognize that if we take emotions out of this and just concentrate on what we both know to be true or not true, we can let us reason together and find some truth out there. So I say all this because in a way this is antithetical to what happened at Daily Wire, but only because of the outcome. There were things that there were things that Scott was saying that I just completely disagreed with, and that's okay. That's why that's number one. That's a show. Number two, that's life. Number three, that's friends. And he was right about some things, and I'm sure I was wrong about some things. Although, frankly, it doesn't seem very likely, but just between the two of us. So, as far as the Daily Wire goes, it has. I have looked at the comments in a number of videos, and they're taking just a shellacking about presumably being opposed to cancel culture and then canceling somebody because they disagreed with what they were saying. And I think that is a fair argument, to be honest with you. I was 100% on Daily Wire's side for the Crowder thing. I think on this one, I think they made a large mistake. And I think I know why. If it had been me to play it, if I had been the CEO of the company, and I'm not, which is why it's successful, I think what I probably, if this is, believe it or not, this is very much like the Frank Luke tragedy. He couldn't stay in the company. He couldn't stay, and he couldn't go. It was just you just stuck. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So I think if I had handled it, rather than stonewalling about it, because I did hear, I saw Ben on Piers Morgan, and I heard Jeremy on a group audio thing where they said we're not going to discuss the Candace Owens issue, and that's smart, but I don't think it's wise. It's smart because of the fact that the more gasoline you pour on something, the longer the fire is going to burn. And once they'd made their decision, then I think this was the smart play. But I think if I had handled it, and I was faced with the really unpleasant choice that Jeremy and the rest of them had to make, if I had that that choice to make, if I was forced to make that decision and the same outcome, I would have basically said, look, if it turned out that she just had to go because because one of the co-founders of the company said that's it, it's basically her or me, and I think something like that on something close to that level must have happened. Then I think what I would have done is I would have said, listen, Whittle's first law of politics is that when the optics of something are so bad, the only reason that you're seeing it is because the alternative is worse. So let me tell you why we had to part ways with Candace. We get the whole argument about the free speech thing and the cancel culture thing, and it's a fair argument, and they're right. It's hypocritical of us to do this, but we're doing it anyway. And we're doing it anyway because the people that built this company and whose life and taken all of the heat and all of the death threats and all of the other genuine horrors that Ben and Jeremy and the rest of them had to go through, it became intolerable for some of us to be paying people to say things that we personally found reprehensible, even though philosophically this is what we should have done. So from a purely emotional, from a purely rational point of view, no, you're absolutely right. It's hypocritical to part ways with her, and it is everything that we're being accused of is true. It's anti-free speech. It's all of those things. Rather, it's not so much anti-free speech. Let's be clear. It's not like somebody taped her mouth up. She's going to be continuing to work, but it is cancellation, and we're against that. We're supposed to be in favor of open debate, but the bottom line is, one of the founders of this company has found it intolerable on an issue he feels so emotionally about. It's intolerable for him to continue paying for this. And that's the reality of the situation. So that's what we did. And all of these criticisms are legitimate, and they're legitimate in a rational world, and we support a rational world. But there's also people involved, and there are times when the heart overrules the brain, and this is one of them, and that's why we did what we did. That's what I would have done. I wouldn't have pretended like, this. I'm risking retribution by commenting on the situation. Well, first of all, I'm not particularly concerned about retribution. I've been retributed enough over the years to not be particularly worried about that. I think that they found themselves in a very difficult situation, and I think what I just said was what I would have handled it, and I don't think what I said was insulting to anybody, but if they want to take it that way and feel like, I'm bailing on them, I'm not. I'm giving you my opinion. I have heard people talk about this with people on our team with real delight, real kind of, big con is getting their comeuppance. I don't feel like I just spoke about it that way. I just don't know why the drama has to be so dramatic. I really, but I think they've taken a very, very big hit from now. I've seen now. Obviously, the comments that people make in a video that's critical of Daily Wire are going to be critical of Daily Wire, but what I saw was pretty heated, a pretty bad place to find yourself in. Andrew DeLay says, what did Candace say exactly? Did she go full protocols of Elders of Zion? No, and this is why this is an issue. Because if she had done that, then that would have been reasonable. Her position is, and what she seems to be saying is, you can say things like, I don't want to spend money on wars for Israel, and also if you say that you feel sorry for innocent Palestinians, it doesn't make you an anti-Semite. I think that's a reasonable statement coming from Candace Owens, and I think the reaction to it was unreasonable. But I also know that people have core values, and that the people who and that Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring built that company from nothing, and they just got, I think Jeremy got caught between just a rock and a hard place, and did the best he could with it. I would have been more. I would have gone more along the way they handled the Crowder thing, in terms of saying this is why we did what we did, and just kind of take your licks and face the music. I think that's the Tylenol lesson, is that it's better to just plain face and deal with an unpleasant truth than to pretend like it's going to go away. I'll tell you who handled this better than anybody I've ever seen was David Letterman. David Letterman did I don't know, it was a 4 or 5 minute segment that's just astonishing. Basically, he starts this thing off and he says, so I need to talk about. So there's been some nasty rumors that that I had sexual relationships with one of our interns, and the fact of the matter is that yes, I did. And right there, he owned it. He immediately owned it. He said, was it inappropriate? It seemed consensual to both of us, but nevertheless, there it is. So let's talk about this. And he went on and basically just said, all the things that have been said about this are true. I did that. And that's how you deal with it. Clavin talks about the line that she crossed and stuff. There. It is possible for me to imagine Steve or Scott. Let's just take Steve, because I'm picking on Scott. Or not picking on him. I've been doing my very best to defend my friend, who I respect enormously. Let's just say Steve got a bird to decide that he's just going to say that the 9/11 was a conspiracy, and he kept coming back to it. Then we would have a real problem. But I think the thing that really has taken the hit is Ben personally. I'd never heard him make that comment about his loyalty to America being dependent on America's support for Israel. I found that to be pretty shocking, frankly. But the point I'm trying to come around and make here, the whole reason I wanted to talk about this, is not to pick a side on this or to beat up anybody, other than to say that the one thing that I think everybody is forgetting in all of this is that this commentary business is people. We're not making widgets that are failing, that are not coming up to spec. We're talking about people who care enough about issues to be willing to get out in front of them and take a lot of heat for it. And it needs to be said that Ben Shapiro, I think more than anybody in this game, has taken more physical risk. There have been more people who have actually been out to hurt him than anybody else. And I don't think anybody else is close to this. He has the passion and the depth of his feelings is so strong that he's willing to subject himself and his wife and his family to continual death threats. And if you feel strongly enough about that to do that, then I can't very well blame a guy who feels strongly enough to make a stand on something that on the surface looks like, not even on the surface, is a violation of the greater principle. He's a human being. And sometimes people have human emotions that, and in areas that are so tender to them that it becomes intolerable. I disagree with his position on it, and I disagree with the decision from a theoretical point of view. But again, this is my entire point. We're not theories. We're not numbers. We're not computer programs, and we're not algorithms. We're people who have strong feelings about these things. And yes, he's subjected to a great deal of harassment and shown genuine physical and moral courage throughout the time he's been prominent. And yes, he's extremely well compensated for that as well. I don't get the kind of hate that he gets. I don't get much hate at all. Now, I don't have anything like the same size of the stage, but I don't know what it is, but I just don't generate that kind of rancor. And all I'm trying to do by bringing this up is to say, as we said with the Crowder thing, which I think was an entirely different situation. Ultimately, we're talking about human beings, and human beings have they have boundaries which they, for whatever reason, right or wrong, are not going to cross. And I think that's basically what happened. I think that, like I said, I think it became intolerable. And whether it was reasonable or not is why we're having the discussion. But I've just done so many emotional things in my life that that it would be pretty hypocritical for me to come out and say, well, thank God everything I've ever done has been completely rational and consistent. So there's that. Now on the larger issue, on the actual issue of the issue, I think this idea that you can't take criticism of anything as any criticism is anti-Semitism, I think that's just plain nonsense. I think it's silly, and I think it's beneath them, frankly. I love America. The reason I got into this business is because of my love for this country, Silent America essays, all this stuff. The reason you're here is because you love this country. I love this country deeply. I love everything it stands for, and I hate to see it attacked and so on. But there are things that have been done in this country. Just take the My Lai massacre, first thing that comes to mind, where I don't believe we were wrong to be in Vietnam, but I thought the way we fought that war was criminally incompetent. I'd be willing to listen to a good argument for why we shouldn't have been there, but having studied the Cold War, I think we should have been there. But my point is that there's no shading the My Lai massacre. That's an American commander taking his troops and just murdering civilians. That actually happened, and for me to talk about it and to criticize it and say he needs to be punished doesn't make me anti-American, even though I'm taking a position against America and American troops. It doesn't make me anti-American to criticize the My Lai massacre. It doesn't make me anti-American to criticize our spending, and it doesn't make me any of those things. This is where I think they really got into trouble. Is this is this sense of this kind of defensive? I'm seeing a lot of it, on the conservative side, where, and I'm not even going to comment on the progressive side because they're all barking mad. We're presumably not, and try not to be, but there's an awful lot of, we've been under fire for so long from so many sides and seen so much destruction that if anybody seems to be wavering, then the inclination is to want to say, okay, you know what, just kick him out. Not a real conservative, he's waffled at the end or whatever. I think probably the clearest way I can get my point across here, whatever point I might have, is when you get right down to it, every single one of us is a political party of one. There are a lot of things that we all agree on, and there are things that we can disagree on, but there are some things that we cannot disagree on and remain on the same team. I can't be in favor of socialized medicine and still be a conservative commentator. So we're all political parties of one. We're all of us. There's nobody in the world, and that includes all 8 billion of us, who agrees with absolutely everything on everything. It just doesn't happen. So you really just have to look at your scoreboard and say, hey, if I agree with this guy on 96% of the time or 51% of the time, then, chances are that's an ally, and if they're not, then they're not. I'm not trying to defend. Somebody said it's good that you're defending Candace. I'm defending her. I think she was unfairly. I think she was irrationally confronted. But I'm not defending her. I am defending her. I'm defending Ben too. I'm defending all of it. I'm trying to defend everyone and everything. I'm trying to follow the 11th commandment. I'm not picking villains here, and I'm trying to square this circle because I understand how it goes, and it's caused them, I think, a significant amount of damage. And the question will be, how well does it? How long does it last, and so on. But look, Ben and Jeremy built that house, and if Ben and Jeremy decide that, and I'm not saying they're doing this, I don't want to be misquoted about this, but ultimately, this got nothing to do with Candace. Ultimately, if these two guys said, we're going to burn this thing down because this is what we want to do, well, then that's their business. Literally is their business. It's their business. They built it. They can run it any way they want to, and the only thing that comes with that is being willing to accept the responsibility for what follows downstream. It's just like that. It's the same thing with. That's why I talked about the situation with Scott. It's my business. I can run it the way I want to, and I'm happy and proud of. I think I made the right decision. I know I made the right decision, and I will continue to make that decision. But what I don't understand, and this is the point of me bringing up this stuff, is I do not understand why this has to be done in public. I just don't. I really think that given the amount of the size and the intensity of the forces that we're fighting together, and to realize that it's unrealistic to assume that we won't have internal fights and not just squabbles, internal serious fights. But I don't see why they have to be public. I really genuinely do not. I don't see why anybody has to be doing this in public. This is the kind of conversation that should be happening in their very lovely briefing room, boardroom. That's a conversation to be had internally, and I don't know why why these things end up going this way. Now, in the case of Crowder, I think that was just. I saw Jared's video. I don't know if anybody's seen this thing with Jared, who used to work for Crowder. I never watched the Crowder show, but what he's saying is painting a picture that is really, really disturbing, and one that, in my limited experience with Steve Crowder, extremely limited experience, I don't have any juicy stories to tell, but I also was not blown off of my chair in shock. Yeah, Eric says the fight between Candace and Ben on Twitter for everyone to see was a disgrace. It's childish. It's not childish to have the opinion. It's not childish to have the debate. It's not childish to be angry. It's not childish to have the discussion. It's not childish to be fighting mad. It's childish to do it in public. It's childish to allow your emotions to cause so many cause so much collateral damage. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. And now, in the case of Crowder intentionally went. Jeremy and Crowder tried to make a deal, didn't work. Fine. Jeremy kept his mouth shut. Crowder kept his mouth shut until it became time for Crowder to figure out he could probably do better by not keeping his mouth shut. I considered that to be a tremendous betrayal, and I'm not a fan. But this issue is so fundamentally, deeply embedded into both of their personalities. I think that they just let their emotions overrun them on this, and that's why I don't use Twitter, kids. Once I saw Twitter come out, I just thought, boy, the last thing I need in the world is the ability for me to give my immediate hot-headed take on something, because I will regret it. So that's all I really wanted to say about it. I think I guess we'll see how much damage this actually did. But I got a lot of friends over there, and I'm very sorry to see it happen. It doesn't. I mean, who wins here, right? I mean, you can do a calculation where you can say, all right, I'm going to do this and this and this. It's going to cost damage, or it's going to do this, but the gain will be greater than the loss. Who wins out of this situation? I don't see anybody winning out of this. I don't see any win at all for anybody. It sounds to me like it's I was here's a small key change. Natasha and I got into watching this Viking show, and there was something going on in the world at the time. I don't remember what it was. This was several years ago. But we got to watching Vikings, and we liked Viking very much, and we thought it was really cool, and we liked Floki. Floki's, anybody who's not a Viking, deserves to die, and so on. And I'd come back from a long day at work, and I was stressed, and I'd been in the firing line, dealing with all of this emotion and stuff. And they had an episode of Vikings where the Vikings sail south and they go to the Mediterranean. And Floki and the rest of these Vikings just love murdering Christians. And I'm perfectly down with that, because that was the Vikings. And anybody who wasn't a Viking, and they had this scene where they went to this bazaar or something, and Floki walks in to a group of Muslims, and when he's in there listening to the Muslims, he says, no, wait, we can't kill these people. These people are different. We can't loot and pillage these people. Basically, on the TV show, we can kill as many Christians as we want to, but we can't possibly. But Floki, who is uber Viking, is now going to lecture me on how Islam is the religion of peace, and all of this. And when I saw that, I got so angry that I got up, and I had a coffee mug in my hand, and I walked into the kitchen, and I threw it as hard as I could, and I cracked the enamel on our kitchen sink, and it's still cracked. And I was not proud of that, and I'm not proud about telling that story, but that's how angry that made me in the moment. That's how furious I was in the moment, that the people who wrote the show were gonna go that far away from what the show is about in order to get their own little personal message in there. It made me furious that that they had made this decision to do it. I went in there and I threw that thing hard. That's not something to be proud of. That kind of temper, you know, that's not it's not good, Bill. But it's Bill, and there you are, you know. It's Bill, it's Ben, it's Candace, it's Steve, it's people, and people are flawed individuals. Thank God. And when I say people, I'm speaking of other people, obviously. So that's what I have to say about that. And I just don't understand it, and I really wish it would stop. But I know it couldn't have been easy for any of them, and I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision. But I would have done this differently. Yeah, I really liked Vikings. It got worse over time. In fact, it got much worse over time. Once his wife became the warrior goddess, she's what, 5'4", barely lift a shield, and now she's got these women troops, and she's punching out guys who weigh 4 times what she does. It's like, okay, all right, so it's not Vikings anymore. Now it's Vermonters. So anyway, you get the idea. Anyway, I felt like I had to say something about it because I just keep wanting these things to just heal. You know, I don't understand the I don't understand the glee that some people have ripping into these things. I've never felt that way. I've never felt like, oh, good, let's tear down somebody else. You know, not somebody on our team anyway. I don't even want to tear down people on the other side. The thing I'd like most for Joy Behar would be for Joy Behar one day to realize how unbelievably awful she is. That's my extent. I don't want her canceled. I don't want her silenced. I think she's a first-class idiot and spectacularly wrong about everything. But I would just the limit of my retribution with Joy Behar would be that one day Joy Behar would be like, wait a minute, what I've been saying doesn't make any sense. I mentioned earlier that these women were being punched in the streets of New York. Everything's happening. There was a couple of malls in Long Beach, and then I think it was Del Amo Mall. This isn't like a flash mob where we're going to all show up at a 7-Eleven and go in there and strip the shelves of a 7-Eleven. We're talking about thousands of people going to a mall and walking out of the mall with everything. And after it happened down here, I think I saw the next day that social media had allowed thousands of people to hit this mall in New York, and the Apple store was just looked like it had been bombed, just flattened. And they say, okay, so the mall's closing, and it's not coming back, like Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. The government is supporting the criminals. The citizens can't even defend their own property without being arrested. And I'm wondering if the people who went to that Apple store in that mall in New York, I wonder if they're going to change the way they vote. I bet you they don't. And this is the thing I don't think I'll ever understand. I really don't think I'll ever understand it. Anyway, yeah, so they closed them all, and this lawlessness and the body cam videos and just you can't tell me what to do just because you're a police officer. I know the law. Like, you don't have any. I do not. I've heard this so many times. I do not consent to be arrested. There it is. Dave Big Boutte for the win. Anarcho-tyranny. The government won't enforce their laws, but they'll arrest anyone who tries to. Man, that is as perfectly phrased as I've ever heard it. In fact, that's good enough to get the pen out for, which is a sign of high regard here in the Stratosphere Lounge. When Bill has to reach for the pen to write something down, you know, you got something of real value. I don't think I could improve on that. So, government won't enforce the laws, but they'll arrest anyone who tries to. Yeah. All right. Well, tomorrow's Friday. I'm gonna take it a bit easy. I think I'm gonna start finishing out the wall and the stuff for story mechanics, and starting on Monday, I will be coming to work and not have to work on the Frank Luke script, which means let's get some of these things to come things done, and let's get back on the Unreal Engine, and let's get Johnny Boyd in here, and let's start doing all the things I've been talking about doing. So we will see. 11 days until the total solar eclipse. I will be in the Fort Worth area, and we will communicate on specifically where to meet on Facebook. We've still got a couple of, at least one more live session before this. And we will all go out there together, so that if it turns out the clouds come over at the last minute, then there will be people who will be able to restrain me and not hurt me. Just, you know, as long as there's 25 or 30 of you, just dogpile me, because I'll start eating the street. I'll start chewing up the concrete if it turns out oh, look, a cloud. Yeah, feces book. I'm afraid it's all we got, frankly. I could, you know what? I could do it on the. A lot of people saying, do we have to do Facebook? We don't. I can constantly update and pin a post to the top of BillWhittle.com. That's a much better solution. Why don't we just do that? We'll just do it at the top of BillWhittle.com. It'll be a pinned post on the eclipse. I'll update it from the road as often as we can, or as often as we need to. Forget Facebook. We'll do it. We'll do it at BillWhittle.com. It's a much better idea. I will post on Facebook that we're doing it at BillWhittle.com. Marvelous. 2 minutes, 42 seconds of totality. I don't remember what it was, what we saw. We'll do both. I don't remember what I saw when we saw it in Idaho, but it was somewhere in that neighborhood. That's enough. That's enough. As you know, I mean, 20 seconds of totality is not enough to really sink in, but I don't know what the theoretical longest is. I think the theoretical longest is something like 6 minutes, or maybe even just about 7. But it's not a question of how long it lasts, because honestly, once the sun disappears and all the light gets sucked out of the sky into that black hole, once you see that, you just lose track of time. I sat there with my mouth open for, I have no idea how long. It felt like a year. But we'll see. Okay, I think that'll do it. For this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, who have been so understanding with this thing. Something good is going to come out of this Frank Luke thing, because there's just a lot of great stuff there. It needs a haircut. So do I. But in any event, Jeff says, I've only seen an annular event. Jeff, if you've only seen an annular eclipse, or if you've seen an eclipse that is a 99% eclipse, you have not seen the eclipse. I cannot stress that strongly enough. If it is in your means to get on that track, do it. It is the most transformative event I've ever had. It's simply the most marvelous thing I've ever seen. Somebody asked me at the T-shirt that it's an older one. I just like the vibe. Okay, yeah, when it was in Idaho. Okay, kids, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for putting up with all this stuff. I'm very happy to have this off my back. There's still a couple of rewrites to do, but those are rewrites. Those are not rights. I honestly thought I was going to keep moving halfway to the goal line forever. That I would just forever have this kind of mathematical sort of, I'm halfway to the goal line, and then tomorrow I'll move it another halfway to the goal line, and I will never, ever, ever get to the goal line. But I did. So it's done. It's in. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us through all of that. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making all this stuff possible. And I reckon we'll see you on Monday, because on Monday I won't have an excuse. I won't have hey man, got to work on this other thing. Feels good to be done. Very good to be done. All right, so YouTube, it's been nice knowing you. And hello, YouTube. We'll see you guys again on Monday night.